welcome to Our Point of View.
Hey.
How you doing?
Hello, Facebook Live, and welcome to Our Point of View. We're so glad you guys can join us. Today, we are going to be talking about the election results. And we have a lot to talk about. Right, Derek?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Good evening. Good evening. Yes, I am here. The election results. Obviously, we have the votes have been in. They've yet to be certified, though. All 50 states, Jacqueline, just to let our point of view audience know, there's a process. So that process simply is after the general election, all the votes must be counted, right? That's part of our democracy. All the votes must be counted. And then the Secretary of State for each of the states have to have a certification process. And most of those certifications take place about 30 to 35 days after the general election. So around December 13th, December 14th, that's when it's certified. And then the electors, right? There's an electoral college specifically for the presidential race. And so the electoral college then get together and they vote in accordance with the popular vote of that state. So say, for example, let's take Georgia, where we have 16 electoral college votes. Because Joe Biden had 15,000 more votes than Trump, then all 16 electors will cast their ballot for Biden. And that's how that process should go.
Okay. Sounds good. And that's what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about the election results. But first, we want to introduce our guests on our panel. So first, we have Cinta Mickle. She's actually a retired sergeant from the U.S. Army. Welcome. And happy Veterans Day to everyone. And we thank you for your service.
Yeah.
Happy Veterans Day.
Great you all.
Yeah.
Veterans Day.
And then we have Mr. Robert Connor right here in the Atlanta GA. Welcome, Mr. Connor.
Mr. Connor.
Welcome.
Thank you.
And all the way from Stuggy, what part of California are you from?
Well, I'm in Los Angeles, but I'm from Brooklyn, New York.
Okay. Okay. All the way from Los Angeles, California, we have Stogie Kenyatta joining us.
Yeah.
Welcome, sir.
Yeah.
Stogie.
How's everybody?
Hey, Stogie.
Cap is excited about that.
And we have Mr. Keely Abraham. What is behind your head? What's going on?
It's a virtual background.
Okay.
Hey, Jamie.
Hi, Mom.
How you
are
doing?
you? I'm good. I'm good.
He said, "Hi, Mom."
This is
That was Jen. Jen said, hey, King.
Oh, hey, Jen. You did sound like her.
That's awesome. Well, guys, welcome.
From Chicago, Illinois.
He's from Chicago, Illinois now. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Well, guys, but once again, it is Veterans Day. And we want to say thank you to all the men and women who served for us and make sure that we were safe back here in the United States. And for those of you who are on the panel who are retired or who are part of our government, our officials, our veterans, our retired veterans, and all, we would like to thank you for your service as well.
Yes. Thank you.
So we're gonna start with our discussion. So we were talking about the electoral colleges. So let's talk about that some more, Derek. Explain to us how, the election, we're talking about the election results. So let's talk about that. How did we get to where we are today?
Yeah, so I think the reason why it is important for our point of view audience to understand is the electoral college is something that we discuss every 4 years. It only relates to the presidential race, and it consists of 538 electors, and each state, of the 50 states, there are varying amounts. So let's take a small state like Delaware, they only have 3 electors, right? Whereas in the state of Georgia, we have 16. And so whichever candidate crosses the 270 votes first, they win they become the president of the United States. Now, the reason why I think this topic is so important, and it's not only because it's only every 4 years we talk about it, is because there's a popular vote, and that popular vote impacts and influences the Electoral College. Now, you would say, well, wait a minute, Derek. 4 years ago, Hillary Clinton got 3 million more votes than Trump. Why didn't she win? Well, it depends on where those votes are, which state, right? And so we don't want no one to think that your vote doesn't count. It does.
Right.
As a matter of fact, it's so important that you vote. But certain states is a swing state as it relates to the Electoral College, right? So Ohio, Virginia, Pennsylvania, they were all waving, not me, they were waving the Pittsburgh Steelers terrible, towel earlier.
Right.
Let's go,
but-
Pittsburgh.
All right.
Shout out to Pennsylvania. We're blue, baby.
Yeah. but every state
House.
has different amounts. And so that's the reason why you see certain candidates will visit more states more often than not, and why they put so much money inside those states. I mean, speaking of money, this is the largest ever cost presidential race, $14 billion.
A lot of cheese.
$14 billion. So there's only 2 events. Here's a little trivia, right? There are only 2 events where we watch so many billions of dollars get dumped into it, but there's no cure for cancer. There's no product that you can touch and hold. One is the presidential race. Do y'all know what the other event is?
The Olympics.
The Super Bowl.
The
The
Super
Super
Bowl.
Bowl.
It's bigger than
Yes, because people spend $5 million for a 30-second commercial.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
so when you have that kind of money flowing in, and so we have to ask ourselves, why does it cost so much to run for office? Doesn't matter if it's the president, Senate, Congress. Why do you need so much money? Why should it cost? It's because television ads cost a lot of money. And that's the reason why, as an adjunct professor, I teach political science, I always like to make that point known, because you're probably saying, well, why am I getting all these emails? I'm going to vote. You don't have to keep reminding me. No, it is because of the money. They want you to chip in $5, $10 here. Why does this all matter? Because the Electoral College, depending on the states, those swing states, the reason why so much money is poured into your state is because if you get certain states, that can give you a path to 270. So I know it sounds very fundamental, but I think it's very important, Jacqueline, Connie, and Eric, and Jen, that we explain to our point of view audience the impact that their vote has. It counts, but when you start talking about the Electoral College, it's a different kind of strategy. It's like playing 3-dimensional chess. Everyone else, including myself, it's all popular vote. Do I have 51%? And do I beat? And if I have 51%, I beat my opponent.
Okay. All right. Now let's talk about the people who were going to the polls, because this time we had a lot of younger people going to the polls, like first-time voters. So,
Yep.
Kimi, how was your experience voting this year?
Well, I've always been actively involved in politics and civic engagement, even at the county and city level. It's super important to me. It drives a lot of where I decide to live, why I decide to live there. So I've always been, like the lone millennial at the polls. This year, it's been a completely different conversation. But I think that's widely driven by social media and the fact that so many younger people have access to information that only, you know, adults would talk about at the adult table before. It's readily available now for 12 and 13 and 14-year-olds to be engaged with, right? Like, let's think about the March for Our Lives. That nonprofit organization is run by nearly exclusively 18 to 21-year-olds. So the civic engagement piece here is a lot bigger than it has ever been before. It's unprecedented, you know.
Uh-oh, looks like he froze.
Okay, well, let's
Here, I want to hear what he has. We'll
we'll come back to him in a second.
Wait, I froze. I'm still here. Can you?
Yeah, you froze.
Oh.
He's like, no, I'm still here.
I was like, no, I can hear y'all. I can hear y'all.
I thought it was the lightning bolt behind him. I thought, you know, I was waiting for the lightning bolt to move.
No, but what I was saying is that, you know, the youth turnout, even in Georgia this year, was pretty huge. In Metro Atlanta, 90% of Black youth voted on the side of Biden. You know, it's a pretty huge turnout there. So I think it's been a complete game changer. I'm really excited that so many young people are being involved in politics because they're starting to realize that there are people out here making decisions about the way they live their life.
Now, did you do early voting or did you vote on November the 3rd?
I did mail-in ballot.
Mail-in?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So did you have to call to confirm that they received your ballot?
No, I actually.
All?
So I'm technically a Michigan resident, and Michigan has a pretty robust mail-in ballot system. I actually got an email from the Secretary of State confirming that my ballot was received and that it would be counted. So that's how Michigan runs. And the Secretary of State is very communicative. The whole office emails out and makes sure that anybody who's registered to vote by mail is communicated with, that their ballot is received. So they're pretty open about it.
Okay. Well, Stogie, what about out in California? How was it for the election out there? Did you vote early voting or did you go out there November 3rd and stand in the long lines?
Oh, no, hell no. I voted early.
Oh, no.
Dropped it off. It's pretty, we're pretty much a blue state. And and we ride, you know, it's always, you know, that the two opposing parties have red and blue because, you know, Crips and blood out here, and I got to go like, was that intentional? That's kind of crazy, but no, we did. There is a hotbed because, you know, there are some conservative Republicans out here. They had the beef with Offset and Cardi B in Beverly Hills, and you know they were, and you know, but we also have a tremendous amount of liberal, affluent, wealthy whites that are hardcore riding for the blue and for Black Lives Matter because there's a creative aspect of it, which, you know, all creative people, you know, not just because of the LGBT that's joining the creative community as well, but the fact that creatives despise this guy because we're in a business to where, I mean, in my estimation, and then many who look like me, Hollywood has a tendency to reward mediocrity. And that hurts creative people because, you know, you see, you know, because as I tell when I teach a master class, the problem with that is that to the mediocre, mediocrity is excellence. So that's a very terrible, dangerous precedent. But when you see the degree of garbage that was in the White House this year and how low they lowered the bar for him, character, morally, spiritually, just basic social grace and human decency, you know, even people who you know, were struggling and recovering drug addicts was like, God damn, at my worst, I wasn't this bad. This is like, you know, so it was strong. So I was very proud of California because California had 68% or something like that, 63% for Biden Harris. You know, the Biden Harris thing. And that was phenomenal for a state this big. And we have, what is it? Derek, what do we have? 37 electoral votes? Derek Jackson.
It's more than that. I think it's more than that, isn't it?
46.
I want to say it's 40 something.
Yeah, I think it's
I think you got like 40. Yeah, California and New York are big. I think it's like 40, 46.
Right. So the two cities in which I grew up, New York and LA, rose pretty hard for them. It's the rest of the country we were worried about. consensus on, because Georgia at that time, before people were going to bed 11 o'clock, was by like 346,000. And people were saying not a lot of nice things about Africans living in Atlanta, because we was like, I know that they didn't come out. So when y'all came back that following morning, it was like, people was like, we were getting texts going like, I knew my ATL fan would let me down because, because there's so many Detroit, Chicago, and of course, New York transplants in Atlanta. And, and so, and we did, but it was like, so no, it was good because I couldn't watch it. And I'm glad because, I called you that day because I thought, the devil was, because, I pinched nerve in my back and I was in pain and I was like, oh man. And then when I saw the early results, I was like, well, we got to turn that off because it's not good for my emotional well-being, because it was like, I despise him, man. In New York, he's human garbage in New York. And even rich people in New York didn't like him. Because, they were like, you ain't wealthy. Because, we got the DuPonts, the Vanderbilts, the Rockefeller, the Rothschilds. I mean, there's New York wealth that owns, that were early investors in U.S. Steel that's in their family. That's how old their money is. You know what I mean? And so he tripped like that because he was like, he was nigger rich almost, And so, it was glad. It's the most, it was rejoiceful, and it's like, but ATL, particularly with the African American women in Atlanta, in the state of Georgia, from the mayor all the way down. I mean, it was like, it just made us look so good, And to have someone from the Greek, a Black Greek, and I mean, it's like, so no,
Amen.
It's phenomenal, So yes, it was rewarding evening.
California has 55 electoral votes. I just looked.
Oh,
55.
whoa.
That's a lot.
That's a lot. Typically, most elections, they can always count on California to be blue. California has been consistently blue forever. I do want to talk about your comment, a couple of things. You talked about transplants coming to Atlanta. I guess I'm one of the early transplants of Atlanta. I came in the 80s. So I feel like I'm an Atlantan. I'm originally from Pittsburgh. However, we say we fool down here in Atlanta. We don't want nobody else. We good. But what I will say is what I feel like I witnessed was a lot of hardcore Atlanta people, not necessarily the transplants, but these hardcore Atlanta people galvanized, came together and really pushed this through. And I do believe that, all due and honor to the Black women who led this, Stacey Abrams and Latasha Brown and all those women, and Keisha Lance Bottoms, who had stood in the gap, because it's amazing to see that activation of a flip. You flip a state that is tried and true red to a blue, because we think about it, most of the major metropolises in Georgia are Black cities, right? And it's almost like the puppeteers of our outcomes are people who are outliers of our metropolises. And so it was great to show that kind of unity and strength. There was something that you said, State Representative, that, you were talking about the electoral system. And I guess there's always been this debate, and it seems like every year the loser has a problem with the electoral system, right? We need to change the system. You see it all over Facebook. Stop the electoral system. And I don't quite understand it to the point where, why is it necessary? I guess that's my question to you. Why, as a government official, do you feel like there is an additional layer of assessing the vote to assure a candidate's presidency?
Robert, that's a great question. And the truth be told, the early framers of the country had to reach a compromise. There was a group of white men who wanted the Electoral College, and there were a group of white men who wanted the popular vote. And so their compromise was saying, okay, we'll just do both, but both mean the Electoral College will only be for the president and no one else. They wanted to have the president and United States Senate in Congress to be electoral college. But when you started changing the system, saying the Congress is going to be every 2 years, Senate's going to be every 6 years, that was the compromise. Hold on, they calling me, but that's the compromise. Yes, I'm here. I'm on 2 different Zooms. I'm
But that's interesting that you said that, because that was a big discussion on our last week voting. We had a big discussion on the Electoral College and what was the purpose of it, and why did people feel like it was necessary. And that was a big question that we were trying to answer last week, because a lot of people do not understand the process of the Electoral College and why it is even necessary. So Representative explained it to us even last week, and that's just the bottom line. It was from the beginning, and it still is. And then we talked about, because we even had the conversation, so what about if we began to write and say, hey, we need to change some stuff, change some laws? And state rep said, listen, you don't want to start changing laws, because when you start writing to go to Congress and you want to change this law and that law, at the end of the day, our community will lose. So
look at the whole thing.
Leave it as it is. Just leave stuff as it is, in essence, because we're better off with it than we would be without it. In essence, am I correct? Oh, state where he went away, but
well, there's a little bit more to it than that, because see, one of the main reasons why was after the abolishment of slavery and the Industrial Revolution and all of that, population density increased drastically in the Northeast, tremendously. Okay, so the industrialized revolutions and Michigan having the auto industry, okay, New York with Broadway fashion and jewelry, everything else, okay, and California with Hollywood, you had basically, if you were going by the popular vote, you really only have to visit like 6 damn states, because that's where everybody lives. You definitely ain't never go to North Dakota, Vermont, the whole thing, because them 20 people, like, we don't need your damn vote. New York and Canada, see, New York and LA alone. Okay,
right.
So that was a breakup. But the thing was that after the abolishment of slavery, all of the Mississippi and, well, all of the Mississippi, some of the Alabama, all of them went to Chicago. From Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, every one of them went to New York and the Philadelphia area. And so we had huge population growth of African Americans working in blue collar industry and factory life, building lives and creating mass, okay, in those areas. The other thing was they were having more children than the average on the suburbs. So what you had in metropolitan areas was this high density. So that being said, so that the other states would remain relevant, okay, because South Carolina, okay, it's a garbage state. And I mean that loosely, but I say that because I performed there. But and I know when they flew me down there to perform, and and they said you can get in at 6 o'clock. I said no, I don't go into former slave states in the South that do not have a football or a basketball team. I don't land there after sundown. And they were like, why not? And I said, like, because y'all don't know how to treat rich niggas. Not only that, no one likes you because you're garbage, because America thinks you're garbage, because if you don't have disposable income, you don't get a baseball, a football, a basketball team. That's corporate America's way of saying, like, you really do not matter. And that's North Dakota, South Dakota, Iowa. All of those places will always forever be red. Because, see, once you get, now, Dallas, there's some whites in Dallas that like blacks. You know why? Because every Sunday they got used to rooting for them, and they fell in love with them from Hollywood Henderson all the way through Tony Dorsett, through, you know what I mean? Because they root for their team, and I love the Cowboys, and they happen to be all black. But you know what? Who I'm a root for? Because everybody black anyway. Okay, so you see, and you see it in Kansas City now. You see it in places, because it's the changing of the tide. Because through arts and culture, okay, that's how you change lives. Because you steal the hearts and the minds of the young people. Because they say, like, you know what? I kind of like LeBron. I mean, I hate niggas, but I like LeBron, or I like Michael Jordan, the whole thing, and there's a softening as you go from generational, and so, and that's how it happens. But those other states would never matter. And if they left it that way, the way it is, and it went with the numbers, they say, like, you hit Detroit, you hit Pennsylvania, you hit New York, LA, okay, Georgia, you hit 10 metropolitan areas. The other 40 states can eat it. they would not mess with them at all.
Well, I also think you have to think about the overall changes that are happening in terms of cultural trends around the country, because your statement is correct, but at the same time, with all of the tech and innovation and education and millennials who are starting up businesses very young, they're starting to infiltrate those cities that were once, satellite, very racist cities. For example, like when Kentucky flipped blue last year, in the governor's race, that was unprecedented. People were not expecting that, and everybody I know from Louisville was through the roof, right? You also have to look at how close the margins were in Texas for this election. The fact that Texas almost flipped blue, was 2-3% away from flipping blue, tells a lot about the transplants that are moving from New York, from Los Angeles, from Chicago, and moving to these mid-sized cities where they can start and build wealth and have a lot more of a comfortable life in Atlanta, in Austin, in New Orleans, in all of these different places. You have to think about the fact that Oregon was once, one of the biggest racist hubs in America. Oregon was so racist that they didn't even want slaves. And now, seriously, and now Portland is like one of the most blue cities in the country. And like that is a completely blue state now because of all of that density that's happening in Portland. Same with Seattle, right? And so you have to think about that because that shit is happening as well. All of these companies opening up these big offices in places like Detroit, places like Kansas City, places like Louisville, like Nashville. And I think it's really scaring a lot of, traditionally red voters who are upholding the racist, old school conservative values that you now have these people who are really working towards progress moving to their cities. And I think that's why the Trump election was so huge, was because it really gave those people a voice, like one last final stand.
Oh, absolutely. You're absolutely right. And I'm not sure it's coincidental or not, however, but if you look at it for the first time in history, both Texas teams have young black quarterbacks making over $30 million a year. Kansas has a black quarterback, MVP, making over $50 million a year. Seattle has a black quarterback, the second highest in the NFL. Okay, and you look at that, they're cultural trends because it draws people, and it changes the dynamics. Here in California, it's a whole different thing because it was like because the Kardashians alone was responsible for at least 200,000 votes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, hold on. Let me make sure I understand what you're saying, Stogie. Because it sounds like you're saying that the fact that you have black athletes or black celebrities ish in certain areas, people who traditionally don't like black people are warm up to the idea of black people because there are these black people that are showing up on the larger stage for them. But I guess the question I have is, there have been black folks playing basketball in all these damn cities for years, and they've still been red.
Right.
So I think that, I guess I can accept in some part that black celebrity does in some respects, make some people who don't particularly care for black people. And I know we're not talking about race, we're talking about the election, but it's hard to talk about the election without talking about race.
Right. Right.
But because the lines that are drawn red and blue sometimes are based on white and black. But I think that there are many white folks who have an ideology that believe that I like Oprah, but I don't want to have nothing to do with any other black folks. Because Oprah is something of an exception. Back in the day, they would say you're a credit to your race. So some white folks still subscribe to the ideas that you're an acceptable black if you're a credit to your race, but the regular blacks, even Chris Rock said it, I love black people, I just can't stand niggas.
Well, that's a valid point, Brother Connor. But the thing is this, what we're forgetting is that every election, a 14-year-old becomes an 18-year-old and is now voting. That 18-year-old that was before now becomes a 22-year-old and is now voting. The 26 and under group is large and huge, tremendously. Now, when you have why I say the Kardashians are responsible for probably upwards of 2 million votes is simply because not only are they wealthy and admired and been on TV for 20 years, but they have followings on social media up in the hundreds of millions. And they're 15, 16 years old who are not going to analyze it as meticulously as their parents did and don't come with the racial history and the animus that they come with. And they're coming with plain and simple that, like Russell Wilson cute, okay? Kobe, it was like the Mexicans that go for Kobe. It's just like It's to the worship part because we live now in a celebrity cult society. And so this cult of celebrity
This is why we have that president. This is why we have.
So what got him in the office is around what's getting him out of the office, because there's a whole new generation that went like, you know what I mean? It was like the beef he had with TikTok, them kids went nuts on it. They had Korean kids, the black Korean kids, because the thing is this, and I tell it when I tour and teach a master class, that I said, we have been for the last 30 years the dominant culture in the United States and in the world, the dominant culture. You go like, no, it's not racial flattery. They're misconstruing culture, thinking it has something to do with wealth and money. No, it has to do with who you admire, who you aspire to be, who is aspirational to you, okay? And seldom is somebody born rich going to be aspirational to somebody to, like, you know what I mean? It's like I said, well, you know, Donald Trump, that was one that's the record go down in history for what? He was the first president to beat a woman, and America never wanted a woman. He's the son of a rich white man in a country built for rich white men, and he became president at 70. The son of an African who grew up on food stamps, he took the oath at 46, 47, and became the second youngest president in the modern era, and won a Nobel Prize, okay, and went to a small college before going to Columbia to then going to Harvard Law. I'm like, that's fascinating. I said, that record's not coming down. When is a freshman senator going to go? That's like you show up at Microsoft and a year later go like, you know what, I think I want to be on the board of directors. And they go like, okay, you need to go to human resources and, you know, somebody needs to talk to you. But the only time in American history a freshman senator showed up and said, I want to be president, Barack did it, Abe Lincoln did it 200 years prior to that. It's never been done. It probably will never be done again. And so we look at that. These are things that become aspirational. And regardless of your culture or your identity, you go like, that is some pretty fascinating stuff. And it's part of what makes us unique. And so if we could somewhat bottle that and get them to see that perspective of it, I think it will change a lot of minds, because there's a new generation coming every 4 years that wants to be, you know, feel comfortable with it. And, you know, and that they're going for somebody that not only is a little smarter than them, but has some degree of decency, because I know that's how I treat my women. I think like, if she's as grimy as me, I really don't want, you know what I mean? I don't go to church that will have any church that says you should be in the pastors. I gotta go, yeah, I need to go somewhere else. Y'all not quality people.
Well,
But
you know,
I think you got three different things that's going on though, right? I mean, we're at this convergence where you got three things going on. You got one fact, which is what I think, to Robert's point, there is still a traditional mindset, those with that Jim Crow mindset.
Absolutely.
But that particular group, though, they're dying off,
yeah,
right? And so now you got the second part of this calculation, that 18 to 39, which was 40% of the vote. Now, that is a significant voting block, right? So to Stogie's point, that 18 to 39, they don't have the civil rights mindset. They don't have the Jim Crow mindset. They have this pop culture mindset. And so when you can influence that 18 to 39, it's 40%. That is a huge block. 40% of 100% of anything is significant. But then you got that third block. And that third block is called economics. The power, we cannot set aside the power of economics, right? And again, keep coming back to the money piece. And just like even in my own race, right, where my district covers 7 of the Atlanta metro area, you have to be able to have money. And the only way you can have money is if when folks look at you, they'll go, I think you can do the job, right? You're actually asking to be interviewed by all your constituents, right? Because they don't want to give up their hard-earned money if they don't think you can do the job, if you're not going to win, right? And so my millennials, they find me on Instagram. But my older generation, my more seasoned generation, they find me on Facebook.
Right.
Right? And TikTok. Right? My younger generation, my 7, right? My 17-year-old even got me on Snapchat. I don't go on Snapchat, but so you got to be able to meet people where they are.
Yeah.
And if you have a charismatic candidate, right? And so there was a lot of things in the post-analysis of Hillary's campaign is the reason why she ended up losing. She was the most qualified person ever ran for the office. Most qualified, hands down, right? But you had a segment of folks, to Robert's point, with that old mindset, thou shalt never have a woman lead over me. Exactly. It's crazy, but that mindset is there. White, black, they use their religion, and that's how they think.
And I mean, lots of women. There was this one woman who said that she doesn't believe that a woman should not be in power, whether it's in the church, whether it's in a government official seat, whether it's wherever. It's just she's explicitly said that she personally thinks that is a man's job. And the interviewer actually responded to her because she said, you know, a woman, if she's pregnant, she could just get emotional and start a war. And he was like, well, hasn't every war been started by a man? And she felt silent. So but I do think it speaks to that fact that there are still a lot of people who believe that, you know, women should not be in power. But you know what? They are phasing out. I mean, you have to think about it. We have London Breed, we have Lori Lightfoot, Keisha Lance Bottoms, Stacey Abrams, Kamala Harris, you know, all of these really stellar Black women who are just leading us to actual tangible change. So that I think that shift is coming.
There were a lot of life lessons learned just here in Atlanta, because 4 years ago, coming to the same time, there was a lot of voter apathy. I mean, Atlanta, just as a voting body, from African-American perspective, we did not get out and vote. And so between then and now, you know, social media has changed. The whole push for people to get involved in the voting process has changed. Even there have been changes for those who have served time in prison, for them to have the opportunity to be able to vote. So a lot has taken place, and a lot of that has an awful lot to do with how this election turned out this year.
Absolutely. Also, African Americans traditionally didn't view women in power in that regard, because for myself included, my mother and my grandmother were my role models. I didn't have a present father, so I grew up knowing, they can drive, they can do the smartest people in my family who do all the shit as women. So we grew up knowing, frankly, I'm hard pressed to find a man. I had my Uncle George, but outside of my Uncle George, we were a female dominated, family lineage wise, because, all of the ones that stayed that showed up at the games and the graduations were auntie and grandma and mama and all that. So, yeah.
Well, I don't think we can leave out that, each ethnic group has its own thing. I think in the Black community, in our media, in our stories, in our plays, in our movies, we always see Black women being the heroes. At the beginning, end of every story, it is always Black women that save the day. And I think that's why. It's true, I think that's why Kamala got the support that she did, both from white voters and Black voters and Latinx voters and Asian voters, because we are starting to be accultured and starting to talk about the fact that Black women really have been keeping America in check since we arrived here as slaves. I think that is super huge. You can't back out of that. I think we can all say this here, right? Like, we all probably have had a principal that has come to our school, been a Black woman, turned the thing around, have all had a elder at the church who has just been rocking it out behind the bishop, as we really know, Black women turning things around. Even in our households, Black mothers, Black aunts, Black cousins, really keeping the family together and actually being able to bring people together. I don't think we can dismiss that from the conversation, because I think it's a huge part about it. And let's also give flowers to Stacey Abrams, Black woman who completely turned around the voter suppression in Atlanta.
Oh yeah.
That's how you lose and then you win. You see what I'm saying? And noticeably, our governor has been very quiet.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I want to know if anybody has an opinion about that.
He's garbage. Yeah. He owned that damn city in the middle of a pandemic. I hope he died in a fire.
What's he gonna say?
Well, he's got to eat some crow, Robert. I mean, think about it. Governor Kemp, on the day President Barack Obama came here, Kemp said, "Why is Obama here? Doesn't he know that Georgia is going to remain red? So now that Georgia is blue, it's hard for you. See, this is an arithmetic problem, right? He can't, because now he's going to have to deal with that in 22.
Yep.
We're talking about 2 years from now. So the same person that he's hearing every day on the news circuit, Stacey Abrams, right? And so he has a certain level of concern. But as quiet as it's kept, they're saying that they're going to try to change our system, which we're going to stop in the legislative under the Gold Dome. We're going to stop it because you cannot keep trying to change the rules. So that's the reason why, Robert, he tried to play low key. See, because he knows in 2018 he stole. Let's put it out there. He stole the government.
Mm-hmm.
He stole the governorship.
Right, that wasn't
He stole it. You can't be the referee and the coach and the player in the same
Right.
game.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
So he got to eat some crow.
So
Yeah.
so to that point, do you see Stacey Abrams running for governor again?
He should.
Well, I
He's
mean,
going to the
well,
White House.
no,
Well,
Stacey Abrams is an executive. She belongs in an executive seat. Let's also not talk about the toxicity of white mediocrity, or we can, because I think, Governor Kemp having a BS in agriculture with some sustainable, politic experience, but he was nowhere near as qualified for that position as Stacey Abrams, who has a bachelor's from Spelman, a master's in public administration from UT Austin, as well as a law degree from Yale. She has turned around, voter suppression at an unprecedented rate. And I think it's just really unfortunate. I grew up learning that we always had to be 3 times as good to get a quarter as much. And I think that played out widely in that election with Brian Kemp versus Stacey Abrams.
Qualifications have never been the white man's burden.
At all,
Never.
ever.
It's never been a burden of a white man to feel like he has to have qualifications
No.
to have opportunity, resource, or wealth.
Yeah, we've always had Carter.
That's the definition of privilege. The way
Yeah.
this color becomes-
Qualifications is something that was assigned to us
The black
that we have been forced through that tunnel so we can justify why we are at some station.
people.
Minorities are the only race that have to justify why you are sitting at a place.
Right.
You could have 14 degrees
Yeah.
and still people who I can't tell you how many circles and how many conversations and how many people I had to damn check. And I had to just drop receipts and go, well, let's compare and contrast.
Yeah.
Then you need to, I was going to cuss really bad right now. You know what I'm saying? You need to
So
shut
glad
it
you did.
down. But that's not, I think that anybody who was beneficial to Joe Biden getting into office should most likely be placed in key positions within the government. But I will say that the governor's race is up for grabs, and I think somebody should grab it. I
Yeah.
think it is prime for the taking.
Yeah.
Yeah, I want to ask a question. Cinta, I want to ask you, since you're retired,
They say we ain't heard from Cinta. Can we hear from Cinta? Hey, Cinta.
hey, I want to. she's been taking notes back there. I'm watching her. She's writing down something. She's taking notes. But I want to ask you, being that you're a female retired in the U.S. Army, did you see any problems when it came up for promotions for you as far as against other white women? Did you have any problems? Did you see any issues or promotions, period?
Well, a lot of the times promotions was generated towards the male, because you understand the military, the Army especially, being supposed to be more Ranger Force, we're more, I would guess the men are more in the infantry phase, and those are mostly men. So a lot of our commanders were infantry based. They was the ones who was out first in the wars and everything like that. And us females was left back as the females. We did take care of the home while everybody was out. So it did start when they started redoing our whole promotion guidelines and based it more towards education and physical fitness and things like that. Women start blowing up. We really started blowing up and started getting recognized for things when they started realizing that it is a lot of common sense that help us with situations and not just the arms that they claim that men have. So before I got out, which almost made me want to stay in, all my commanders, my general, my colonel over my command staff, my command sergeant major, the Air Force command sergeant major in general were all females. And I was like, what?
Just as you were getting ready to leave.
And I worked for one of them, General Singh. She was a Black female. All of them was Black, but we had one Caucasian female that was over the Air Force. Everybody else was Black female. And they still texting me to this day. And I thought, kudos to each and every one of you, because what they had to learn, like I said, we had to get smart on them. We had to start taking the training and understanding the stuff where we can come in with knowledge that blew their strength out. And of course, still being able to do the strength too, doing the run and push-ups and all that nonsense. So we had to, blow it out. And I had to commend. Now, the only problem that we really did have, it took a long time. You understand, I joined the military in 1986. And I would have stayed my rank way down real little. I'm serious, because they never listened. I used to get so mad. I would be talking to commanders. I would be talking to NCOICs, and they would look straight through you. You could look in their face and see them looking right past who you are. Wow. And it didn't make a difference with my color. It was because I had these boobs. And they would look right past, and I would be sitting there jumping up and down. Hey, hey, hey. So when I started listening to the old, telling me, this is how you got to beat them out. You got to beat them at their own game. That's what I started doing too. I started educating myself. I started learning about things. I started trying to figure out the other way to open the door, get to the front, not having to go all the way around, just go straight through the middle. Once you start doing that and they start turning around and say, what the heck? I had so many people turn around and say, what do you mean she getting ready to be, pen master sergeant? Yeah, that's right. That's me, And then of course, now you have to prove that. No, right. Because you got it. Now you got this big old sign over you, and now you have to prove it. And everything has to be explained. Everything you're doing, you have to have a whole big explanation of why you went to the left instead of going to the right like most men do. Mm-hmm. So that's what made it kind of hard. I'm very, very proud of all my women. I'm very, very proud, like I said, Black, white, Asian, everybody that has come through, they have been so strong. And they're going to blow this thing out. And I can definitely see us going through everything later on, even to presidency. I can see this happening. I can really see, because I see the military changing more and more every day.
And I said, it's funny because I said that actually people said, well, who did you vote for? I said, I voted for Kamala Harris. That's who I voted for. I didn't vote for Biden. I didn't vote for Trump. I voted for sister girl, Kamala Harris. That is actually why I went and cast my vote. Because if it had it just been between Biden and Trump, I can't say that I would have gone to the polls. I really went because I wanted Kamala to win. That was me 100% throughout the entire thing. People kept saying, well, you don't know her record. And I wanted to address that too, because people kept saying, well, she did this and she did this. And my thing was, into our point of view audience, I want to say to everybody that everybody has room for change. We cannot continue to hold against individuals what they did 10, 20 years ago. We all did stuff 20 years ago that we regret, or there's decisions that we made when we look back now 20 years later, had I had the opportunity 20 years ago to make, I probably would have made a different decision. She didn't. Mm-hmm. So we've all made mistakes, but come on, can we give the people room to grow? Can we allow people to move on with their lives and make better decisions? That's where we're falling short, as holding something against someone for something that they no longer, that may not long, it is no longer her opinion, what she did.
But
Maybe it's no longer
you-
Biden's opinion. It's no longer my opinion, things that I did. So we have to give people room for growth and allow that change to take place and go through the process. Okay.
I think there's
No.
two things happening here, right?
No.
I think. Oh, what were you saying, Stoji?
well, the charge against
No, I was just going to.
totally unfair. It was totally unfair because she, as a freshman district attorney in California, okay, she didn't put anybody in jail. She didn't arrest them. By the time they got arrested and charged, okay, they brought the evidence to her. She just did what everybody else would have done. She didn't arrest them,
Yeah.
okay, and she did not sentence them, okay? But as a district attorney,
Thank you.
she's not a prosecutor. So by the time that they're through 3 stages of judicial of the law enforcement system, by the time they get to Kamala. So what gets in front of her desk is insane. And at the time she was there, California is going through a serious drug problem, and there was mass murders and stuff going there. It's the same thing with the crime. Every Black elected official voted for that crime bill in New York, okay? And why? And I was for the crime bill. Well, why were you for the crime? Because I'm from Brownsville, Brooklyn, and bad Black people were killing good Black kids. Bad older Black kids were killing good Black kids all over New York, Chicago, Baltimore, DC. Baltimore, which ain't not this big, led the damnation murders like 4 times. And I'm going like, how could Baltimore leave anybody anything? Ain't enough of you niggas here. They kept killing. What I'm saying is, everybody Black voted for it. Why? Now there was unintended circumstances because the sentencing laws were, but that's not our responsibility. But after it happened, the crime bill went down. Why? Because there were drive-by shootings. It was mass, so they had to come up with bills for that. So the thing Kamala did was, the other thing was this. Not only was she California's first Black district attorney, she was from the HBCU with a different name, and they gave her help. She had limited power. She was there, and she said, these cases came to my desk. What is the evidence behind it? She looked at the evidence. She's like, woo, send it to court. The judge made the decision. So whatever the jury decided. Now, if Kamala sends it to court and says the district attorney is going to go ahead and file the charges, and they go to court, if a jury of 12 finds him not guilty, then do we pat her on the back and say, hey, look what Kamala did? No, we don't. She don't get for the ones that got off. The ones that got locked up, because like I tell them, I said, you need to stop acting like we don't do some bad shit, okay? Because see, I'm the one. Now, I have some flaws because where I come from, I was a juvenile felon growing up, but I'm pro-death penalty. They say, well, why are you pro-death penalty? Some of these niggas need to be dead, okay? Tukey Smith out there who started...
Stogie, no.
Tukey Smith started the Crips, okay? There comes people like, but Stogie, he wrote a children's book. It was like, he should have read a children's book. Don't kill nobody. Start killing people. The first thing, share, maybe not kill. You robbing a 7-Eleven. You're robbing a 7-Eleven. That guy behind the counter, none of his dreams came true. He didn't. That was not the job he wanted when he was a kid. I want to work at a 7-Eleven. The 2 a.m. shift. Okay? Tukey killed him over $39. No, I'm sorry. They should have killed Tukey's ass. Okay? Why? Because all life is sacred because none can be replaced, regardless of color. So that being said, we need to stop acting like what Kamala did was wrong. No, some of them folks needed to be locked the hell up. I'm from Brownsville, Brooklyn. I grew up around a bunch of cats that is not going to see heaven. Okay? And I'm just telling you that some of it, so that argument they had against her.
That's good. Thank you.
But it's all like, to me, radio noise after a while. There's not one person, and no offense, State Rep Derek Jackson, or one politician that doesn't have something that they may have done in a part of their life that doesn't reflect the life that they represent as a public figure.
Right.
And I'll be honest with you, I'm a little over politics. I'm over because what I realize is between position, power, and money, most politicians can be bought. There are very few that have the ethical countenance to stand in difficult situations and go, I'm not going to move to the left and to the right. If it gets me voted out of office, then it gets me voted out of office. If it gets me, and so that's what makes me want to regurgitate about our modern day politics, because many, I like that Raphael Warnock is running, because to me, not that he probably has led a pristine life, but he's a person of character. And we need more people of character to get into these offices and not people trying to wheel and deal to fatten their pockets, because
Right.
that's why people are disenchanted with the whole political system. That's
Yeah.
why, you know, people, the voter energy was low in 2016. And that
Yep.
question I have, if Trump wasn't a complete, absolute psychopath these 4 years, if he was even more subtle, low key,
Yeah.
would he have been voted into office again?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
You
absolutely.
can tell by the numbers. I mean, it wasn't like he lost by a huge margin either.
Look, if he would have, if he could have acted, he could have continued to act the way he did. If he'd have just gotten out there and told folks to wear a mask, and you start
And
to see
wore a mask. If he would
a
have
drop.
led by example, he didn't
But-
do it.
Yeah, yeah.
But if he'd have did that, and then you start to see a decline in the numbers, we wouldn't even be having this discussion. He'd be back in office.
Yeah.
I don't know. I gotta politely disagree.
Go ahead.
Here's the reason why. Because I still think that no citizen want to be lied to, right? I mean, this
I don't agree with that.
this guy got over 20,000 documented lies in 3.5 years.
And
Gotcha.
72
Right. No,
million people
I mean-
said, okay, keep lying.
Right. But I want to go back to Robert's point, because I think I don't want us to gloss over it, right? I think it's about character, right? I mean, if I was blindfolded and you said that this person never been in office, and you want to go straight from waking up in the bed to the Oval Office, I would have been like Stogie. I would have been like, no, dude, you got to at least get elected as dog catcher first, right? You know, something. And the reason why I'm saying that is because remember the narrative that they were trying to put on Barack. Barack served in the state legislature like me, right? Barack was a junior freshman in the United States Senate, right? And they were saying that he was inexperienced. So how is it that Barack is inexperienced, but you got a guy went from being celebrity apprentice to the White House and he's experienced? He
But
got
you are-
4 bankruptcies.
But you already know that.
You know, your daddy gave you $250 million and say, go live a good life. I don't see how I would have voted for a person with no experience like that.
But,
Well, I
but
think-
Jack, you just answered that question.
Mhm.
Right.
Look how close this race is right now.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I mean,
yeah.
and like I said, he can tell 30,000 lies. But if the science, this whole coronavirus was something that just really, you know, stuck with him, and he was just really about listening to Fauci, listening to the other doctor, and he told these folks, hey, they were asking people at these rallies, hey, if the president asked you to wear a mask, the same ones that weren't wearing them, if you'd wear a mask, they'd ask him, would you wear it? And he's like, oh yeah, without a doubt. So,
Yeah.
and again, he don't look like us. So the same rules don't apply.
But I'm not talking about low-level voters. I'm talking about those who've been in office, evangelicals who say they carry the Bible with them even to the bathroom. They put all the morals and the character aside for this guy. I'm just talking about if we're gonna
I have the
if all
answer.
parts being equal, right? I'm not talking about education. I'm not talking about wealth. I'm just talking about purely what are the characteristics of a good leader.
Listen,
Right.
there's a condition that these people were suffering from, and this is the post-Negro president syndrome.
Bingo.
Precisely.
So,
See, Robert
Precisely.
said what I wanted to say, but I couldn't say it the way Robert just said.
Say what you want to say. It's your point of view.
Absolutely, because
Oh my God.
and conservative religious right, they showed the world that basically they hated niggas more than they loved God.
and I'm so glad they did.
You know, yes, indeed.
Yeah.
They, you know, because it's like they turned their back on everything he ever said. He's married 4 times. He slept with a porn star. He spoke
Married to a
terribly. He chatted there, and he said, 2 Corinthians, you know, reading from the book of Job. And I'm going like, nigga, did you?
No, yeah.
Like,
Man, he got 3 baby mamas.
yeah. Corinthians 2, he played for Trim with a check. I'm going like, really? Because, you know, it was like, it was just like,
One thing you can appreciate is that he scratched the dandruff of the scalp of America.
He said, look, it's still there. You thought it was gone, but it's still there.
And
but I think
still putting people out of their jobs. He still find Defense
still
Department people.
He fought a cat an hour after he finally lost. But the beautiful thing is this, the Southern District Court in New York City wants him in jail, okay? Now, angry rich crackers with money in New York, or they can be vengeful as hell. They ain't gonna come get him. They are going to, the Southern District Court in New York, they do not play. They are going to come get that cracker, okay? Because New York is like, Bloomberg, all of them wealthy, they were like, you know, look at you, you know, it was like, you know how, he said, rich guys don't tell everybody they bought a new hat. That's what Trump was. He was like, he was, you know, a nigga with a new hat. And, you know, but yeah, but it's, without a doubt, the religious right was who was the most disgusting. And I have quotes from all of them, which I posted on Facebook, where Lindsey Graham and all of them are saying what a despicable human being he was, and how they flipped, and how, you know, their morality was for sale, like Representative Derek Jackson was saying, you know, because it's like there is no moral line to which they will not stoop when it comes to race, you know.
But we got our own now. We got our own. Somebody in Georgia was doing a mosh pit crawl over a certain representative, the black.
Oh Lord! Don't say his name.
Don't say it. Don't say it.
Don't say his name.
I'm not saying it.
Oh,
I ain't saying his name.
You know, I'm just saying. I'm just asking for a friend.
What's his name? I don't know Georgia politics, but who did it so I can know?
First name Vernon.
Last name Jones.
Vernon Jones. Okay. You don't have an album out, do you? No. He is not an alpha. No. I said you don't have an album coming out.
He said an album.
Oh Lord, you don't got
No. Albums are sacred. Albums are sacred. Okay, that's the first one. That's Paul Robeson's track. You know.
But whether he's an alpha, beta, zeta, data, he is as dangerous to our community as any evangelical. Because you become a puppet. You become a puppet.
Okay.
You know?
Yeah.
State Rep, you're gone. We cannot see you. Hello.
I'm buffering. I'm trying to get back up.
Okay. Well, while State Representative is buffering, I wanted to say to our viewers, if you're out there and you have questions for any of our guests, please feel free to put those in the comment section, and our wonderful host, Jen, will read them and ask your question for you. So if you have something that you'd like to ask, we are about to wrap up. It's always so good when we have these kind of conversations. The time just goes by so fast, but we do want to give you an opportunity to ask any of those questions that you might have. Also, to our panel and our guests, we're asking that you would please share this live with your viewers as well. Go back, they can check it out on the replay. If you can put it on your Facebook page, maybe a little snippet on your Instagram, and then invite those viewers to come check us out, and then ask them to go subscribe and like to our YouTube page, Our Point of View Talk Show. That is very important that they put talk show, because there's other Our Points of View theirs, but there's none like ours. All right. Yeah. Thank y'all.
Absolutely.
You haven't heard from Jennifer, them lips though. Oh my goodness.
So,
Mike, let me back in, Mike.
Before we go, Keem and I was having a conversation, and he was talking to me about how economics is going to play a very important role if we are going to do any kind of growth or development within our community. He talked to me about the economic piece, as well as for those of our Gen Z young people, as well as our millennials who are now purchasing homes and going into different places to buy their homes, how important it is to keep the dollars in our communities so that when they are going out, and even for those in my younger generation, for those who are going out and even purchasing homes, how important it is to always keep those dollars when you go to do these things. Search out the surrounding areas because you want to keep your dollars in your community.
Absolutely.
And one thing that I had shared with him was, well, I love where I live, but I like to shop at Lenox. And he was like, Mom, but that ain't how it goes.
You gotta recycle those dollars.
Where you live. You can't keep going with the Lenox because Lenox ain't putting nothing in your school system. You know what I mean? They ain't paving none of your streets, so we have to put that kind of information out there to our viewers and our listeners, because I think that that's something that's also very important as we continue to move forward in our political climate and as we move forward to the voting on December 7th. But Keem, you're going to go and then we're going to let Rep talk about December 7th voting.
I'm going to go and talk about what? No, I'm messing with you. No, I mean, it's just, I when I was in college, I took one class on urban planning and it pretty much changed my life. I didn't even know what urban planning was, what urban legislature was. And I just started to learn a lot. But the big piece that I learned was just like you said, the recycling of the dollars, right? Like, well, I went to school at Tri-Cities, right? So we get off of school, go over to the East Point MARTA station, and then we take the train up to the north side and go spend all our money up there and then take MARTA back home and go home. And we wonder why like our MARTA stations don't look as clean, or why we don't have as nice sidewalks, or why our roads isn't paved, because, well, we just went and dropped $200 on the white side of town. And all of those taxes are being paid up there in those counties and those cities and those municipalities. And so they're getting that revenue. The same thing happens when people decide to start a business, right? You might live in Douglasville, but you decide to go start a business in Conyers, right? And so what does it mean for when you're living in one place and you're paying property taxes here, but you're running your business and paying business taxes there, and you're shopping in this place and paying shopping taxes there? But what could we imagine our own communities could look like if we built businesses in our communities, if we went to school in our communities, if we went to church in our communities, if we did all of those things within our communities? Imagine how beautiful and magical they would be. So that's more so what I was speaking to when you were asking and we were having that conversation.
Good information. Thank you very much for that, sir. Now to State Rep, or if somebody else wants to talk about it, we do have another election because we don't want people to lose sight of, we do have another election coming up. That is a very important election. And
actually, two of them.
What you say, Jack?
There's two runoffs.
Okay, go ahead.
Derek, are you on?
Yes, I'm back.
Can you explain the two different elections? We have one December the 1st and one January the 6th.
December the 1st?
Yeah, there's
yes.
a runoff. Yeah.
Right. So if you there are a couple of races that, because the candidates did not get 50% plus one, now you have to go on a runoff. Those races are on December 1st.
Mm-hmm.
So let's say, for example, if you live in Fulton County and you reside where State Senate District 39 is, there were 4 candidates in that race. Of the 4, you take the top 2. One had 45%, the other one had 25%. Those 2 individuals have a runoff on December 1st. December 1st. And so if you live in anywhere in Georgia where there are runoffs for a local seat, could be mayor, county commissioner, what have you, it's going to be on December 1st. For the United States Senate and the Public Service Commissioner races, that's on January 5th. January 5th. And instead of putting them all on one, which we should have, because we would have saved the state millions of dollars, because we are the minority party, the majority party is trying to game the system. They're trying to game the system. And so by splitting it off December 1st and January 5th, try to create confusion. We have to be smarter than that. This is three-dimensional chess. So December 1st, ladies and gentlemen, and for the Senate, John Ossoff, Warnock, running against Perdue and Kelly Loeffler, that's on January 5th, 2021, and David Blackman running for PSC. Both are important. And now if you look and say, well, there's no more local races in my area where I reside, and you don't have to vote on December 1st, you're good. But everyone in Georgia will need to turn out on January 5th, because that is a statewide. All those races are statewide. All 159 counties, all 538 cities will be voting, and they're counting on for Georgia to do what we have always done. You may ask, what is that?
Yeah.
We don't show up.
Mhm.
We don't show up, Eric. We don't show up, Connie. We don't show up, Jennifer. So what we have to do, Jacqueline, we have to make them a liar. We're going to show up, show out, and listen, this is not the time to say, well, I don't remember what their platform is. Let me just tell you the reason why you want to go and vote. John Lewis, RBG, Dr. King, Thurgood Marshall, Rosa Parks, and the list goes on. Because they can't vote, we must vote.
Yes.
Hey, Jack.
Paved the way. They sat on buses. They got sprayed with water hoses. German Shepherds were sicked on them, right?
Yeah.
Jim Crow is no longer around, but see, Jim Crow has some nieces called Jane Crow and a nephew named John Crow.
And
so they're banking on us not showing up,
Karen
Robert.
Crow.
Right?
Don't forget about Karen Crow.
Yeah, Karen Crow too.
Hey, Jack,
Right?
why you talking about it, Jack?
Go ahead, Cap.
Speaking of the John Lewis, Nikema Williams is talk about that interesting race, because that's not over, and there's apparently someone's going to serve in that 5th district seat for about a month until she takes over in January.
So that race is also a runoff. That's on December 1st, which is interesting, see, because they could have simply just said, you know what, we're going to let the remaining time of John Lewis' seat be vacant, right? And just, you drape a black cloth over his desk, and that's it. But instead, they had about 7 or 8 individuals to run to serve the unexpired term of Representative John Lewis' seat. So they each had to pay $5,000. Now they got to run off. Now let's say whoever wins on December 1st, they get sworn in. They're only going to occupy that seat until Congresswoman-elect Nikema Williams show up in the beginning of January. So it really, again, this is about money. It made no sense for somebody to only be in a seat for 2 or 3 weeks. There's no action to be done because it's Christmas time, right? They all going to be out of session. And so if a person just say, well, I was a congressperson for 3 weeks, and you put that on your resume, okay, all right, fine. Unless they're planning to come back 2 years from now and run against Nikema Williams.
And that's what they mentioned. That's what they talked about, even if it was just something to add to the resume, because what they can't do, they can't take it away from you.
Right.
Regardless of how long you were there. You cannot say, if you won that spot for a month, they can't say that you were legitimately the 5th district congressman or congresswoman from the state of Georgia.
Correct. That's right. It's on the record. You always be in the history books, right? But a logical person would say, why do that? Right? I mean, even if you got $5,000 laying around, Stogie, I wouldn't put my $5,000 in it, right? It just doesn't serve any purpose, because to run for office is very expensive. It's time consuming. It takes a lot support and sacrifice for the family. I mean,
Right.
this is a lot to be involved. But and I'm glad Kat mentioned that because that too will be on the ballot December 1st because there's a runoff. And so again, depending on where you are, there are some runoffs across Georgia.
So what you're saying is everybody who is listening to this should go to their county office and find out if there's any runoff elections, do their research before the 1st of December of who the candidates that could best represent their outcomes and make sure they show up and vote for them.
Right.
That's right, Robert, because they're banking on we're not going to show up, we're not going to do our homework, and we're not going to research it. But the truth be told, we pushed this vote really hard, and we got the response because people's voice wants to be heard, right?
Mhm.
And again, coming back to Akeem's point earlier, that voting block can't be denied. When you got 18 to 39-year-olds and 40% of them voted, that is a very powerful block. It's just as powerful as the 55-plus block, right? That block is talking about Medicaid and Medicare and Social Security. Very different than that 18 to 39-year-old. They want, a state college for free tuition. They want other things. So you're right, Robert. We got to do our homework. And again, they really believe that we're sleeping at the wheel. And history has demonstrated that.
Not after this week, baby.
Right.
Right.
I was getting ready to say, I think they woke now. Stay woke is we need them to stay woke and go out to those polls. And I think that the other thing is important to mention, that applies to every state, right? State rep, doesn't matter if you're in Georgia, if you're in New Jersey, California, wherever there are runoffs in your particular state, you need to go and research that and participate in that voting, exercise your right to vote in those states where you are, because some of our viewers, not all of we don't just have viewers from Georgia, we have viewers from all over. And so they need to also understand that wherever they are, that they need to go and do the same thing so that their vote can be counted and check the dates.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Absolutely, Connie.
California, New York, Texas, they got runoff votes. So you're exactly right. That's a very good point, Connie.
Yeah. If there's a runoff election in your area, who's that talking? If there's a runoff election in your area and you need any additional incentive on why you need to get out there and vote, I'm going to tell you what you need to do. If you haven't already done it, you need to go and watch All In: The Fight for Democracy. Are you guys familiar with that film? It was produced by Stacey Abrams. It was released this year on September the 9th. I was told by a good friend today that I needed to watch it. I went and watched it, and it absolutely blew my mind. It's one of the most powerful films that I've seen about voter suppression in this country, about the things that have been done to purposely keep us from going out and letting our voices be heard. So if you need any extra incentive, go on Prime Video, watch All In: The Fight for Democracy. That's going to give it to you right there. It's going to talk about the timeline of the history of this country for voter suppression, the issues that we've been facing from polls being changed at the last minute, from the voter polls, the voter rosters being purged, to just everything that has been done to try and keep people out of power that are actually going to make a change for us. So along with researching those individuals in your area who are running in those runoff elections, go out and look at some of the other history, some of the other the movies, the documents, and just things like that are going to give you that information, because it is powerful. It is deep. There's a lot going on. It's way more than just Georgia. This is a nationwide problem, and we got to make our voices heard. It's not about the presidential election every 4 years. We have to get out there every single time there is an election.
You know what, Jen, on that, I just wanted to say, like, for me being like the youngest person on the call, I want to urge all of you, like, the culture you have to now instill in any young people in your life by example is making government and politics cool. It has to be made cool. You have to find a way to get people engaged, right? Because they're going to be the ones who, when you are getting older and the government is making decisions about how you're living your life in your final years, they're going to be the ones who have to vote on it. And that has to start happening now. 18-year-olds, like there should be some kind of voter registration in every public high school. That just needs to be there, right? Like those are the kinds of things we have to start making cool. Whether we need to have a cookout outside the polls to make sure we all show up, go in and vote, then come out and get your drink, whatever it is. Like we have to start making those kinds of things cool and popular in our community. Like if everybody's showing up to the city council meeting on Tuesday, that's the meetup on Tuesday night, then like that's what we're doing, right? We have to start making those things cool and popular because that's what's really gonna move that needle.
And that's one of the reasons why even with the even in college towns where there are a lot of different schools, they've even had issues with students being able to vote where there's just all kinds of things that are just coming up that are not allowing the students to be able to vote, because they know when they get out there, if they allow their voice to be heard, they are coming in numbers and they're going to make a change. So they're doing everything they can to even suppress that younger vote. It's not even just about race at this point anymore. It's even about age, because they know that younger generation is coming out in numbers.
That educational piece is super important because, you know, back in junior high school, even elementary school, when they're talking about George Washington and him having wooden teeth or whatever, I could have been learning more about, you know, the importance of voting and how that affects the community and stuff like that, you know?
So nationally, the two Senate seats that could possibly flip the Senate, those are Georgia senators, right? Are those
correct?
Yes.
U.S. Senate, yes, U.S. Senate.
And that would, so those are vitally important to us regardless of where we live. So we need that information so that, because everybody in California has some connection with family in Georgia, and we need to stay on them like we did in social media to say, listen, we're shaming people because I embarrassed people. I shamed and called some friends. I said, like, because, you know, and I would have Shaq and Snoop Dogg came out and said, I'm voting for the first time. And I was like, you trifling ass nigga. I was trying, because I'm like, you didn't vote for Barack? You know,
now, hold up. Now, I don't know about
the
Shaq.
first time
Shaq and Snoop Dogg both never voted before in their life.
But hold up. Snoop, in all fairness, Snoop didn't realize he could vote because he got a felony.
He was in prison. He didn't know that his record had been
I get that. No, that's fair.
But that Shaq ain't got no
reason. For Shaq, there's no damn excuse. All that money he steal, you got to be kidding me. Shame on him.
But you know what though? It's probably a lot more of them that haven't voted for it. See, those cats got money, and State Rep Jack mentioned it early in the previous show, where if you've got money like that,
the more bread you have in the shit sandwich of life, I get all that. What I'm saying is this, though. They weren't born rich and their relatives ain't rich. What I'm saying is this: you're part of a community, okay? We're part of a culture. You embrace hip hop, you embrace our struggle, you ride for us. We know everybody I know black that's got money at one point did. That's no excuse. You don't lose your soul because you got some cheddar, you know? But it's like, the names of the two senators that they need to vote for in Georgia that will flip it so we can get Mitch McConnell out. What are their names?
John Ossoff.
We need John Ossoff and Raphael Warnock.
My Morehouse brother.
Okay. That needs to be more.
You know him, Morehouse brother.
Okay.
No, it's but yeah, because that is vitally important. And the thing is that I was with Barack for when, you know, it started out, and I'm telling you, it looked dim at one point, and, you know, it was like, you know, and you have one of our former biggest sellouts that is living in Georgia now, the former owner of BET, Bob Kitchen Slave Johnson, who's down there now. Bob Johnson.
I don't disagree.
He's a kitchen slave.
But you know, it's something about very wealthy black people who are cushioned by their money.
That's what I was trying to tell you.
I get all that, but that's all the more reason that you should vote for us, because they can't hurt you. That's all the more reason you should. It's like,
that's
listen,
a good point,
some people that will never get a pass. Tavis Smiley, never getting a pass. Never getting a pass.
Where has he been? That's a whole nother show.
Well,
yeah. No, that's a very good point. Where are they now, right?
He's out there in LA somewhere.
You know,
So you go find them for us.
You know, because she
Wait.
was thing, you know, because I yelled at one of his things when he had, you know, the state of Black America. The state of Black America, I was like, you're a rich brother on TV with a law degree. Go marry somebody black. You want to talk the state of Black America? It was like, man, I'm trying to be his.
Be nice, Stogie. Well, you know what, guys, we are going to have to wrap this up eventually. So, because we can go on for days and days and days. This is a conversation with no end. But I want to thank all of our guests for being here with us. For Robert Connor, thank you for being here with us. Stogie, Cinta, Kimi, you guys were amazing. This show was amazing. I really, really appreciate you guys for, you know, expressing your opinions and everything. And, you know, this is what we need. We need more conversations like this. And we are going to have more conversations like this. Actually, next week is all women show. We're going to have all females on. And we're going to have an amazing time. We're going to talk about everything. What'd you say?
I said, that's a whole
That's a lot of talking.
Yeah, you think we went a half hour over this show? We might go an hour over next week's show.
I'm gonna still be talking next week.
You know how we do.
Nobody has you, Connor.
But thank you guys so much for joining us. We appreciate you. And guys, remember, everything you heard and everything we said was our point of view. We'll see you next time. Thank you. Bye.